There is Bill. So, folks, I know this is an Amiga stream. I know it's an Amiga stream, but obviously we're all Commodore fans here, and I know a lot of you are like some hardcore Commodore 64, Commodore 8-bit folks here in the stream. So this is a really special one. And like I said, I always say the best way to teach is through storytelling. And our guest today is a master storyteller. Bill Hurd is one of the nicest, most energetic, smartest, and generous folks I've met in the retro community. He's become an integral part of the vintage computer festivals around the country. He shares his knowledge of computers, electronics, and history. He was the principal engineer of the Commodore TED machines, and those include the Plus 4, C16, C116, C264, C364, of course, the Commodore 128. Some folks call it the best 8-bit computer ever made. And he also did the initial architecture on what I call a Commodore Unicorn. It's the Commodore LCD computer. Bill's going to tell us a little bit about that today as well. He's also narrated the documentaries Growing the 8-Bit Generation, Easy to Learn, Hard to Master, The Fate of Atari, and he also stars in The Commodore Story, changing the world 8 bits at a time. He produces videos for Hackaday, does collaborations with Jerry Ellsworth and June from Nibbles and Bytes, who's also going to be at VCF East next week, and he's also known in our videos as Not the Amiga Guy. Welcome, Bill. It's a pleasure to have you.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Bill. Thank you so much for coming on today. Really, really appreciate it. I love the 6502 shirt.
Yeah, thank you. That's a Taylor and Amy special there.
Amazing. You're sounding great. Everyone hears Bill well. I think I can even put a little boost on you, Bill. But you sound. Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna gain you up a little bit. Let's see. Let's try that.
Test.
Good. Yeah.
See, in my day, we only had 8 bits, which was only good for 63 dB signal to noise ratio, but you lost a bit, so you ended up with 7 bits.
Oh,
but
interesting.
That's generation.
Well, you're sounding fantastic now, Bill. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's so great to see you. Like I said, I can't go to a Vintage Computer Festival and not think about you. You give so much. You're so generous with your time and all your knowledge and all your stories. Like, not only do you tell great Commodore stories, but I've been to some of your seminars where you taught people how to recap machines. You taught people how to solder. I went to one chip design class once, and I understood about the first 15 seconds, and then I was out. But I just appreciate it so much, and just being there and I just kind of absorbed so much stuff. And a lot of my Commodore history I learned through you at VCF East. So thank you so much.
Cool, very cool.
So speaking of VCF East, we got
happiest avatars I've ever seen on the internet.
You've got the what?
You've got the happiest avatar of anybody I know on the internet. The one where you're dancing around and stuff. Yeah.
I know. I love this stuff. I have a great time. It's definitely a great hobby, and most importantly, I love all the people that I met along the way. All the people who come to the stream every Sunday. The people at VCF East, yourself. It's just a great community.
Yeah.
So speaking of VCF East, it is coming up next week. It is one of my favorite events. I'll never forget the first VCF East I ever went to. You were giving a talk about the Commodore TED machines, which I wasn't familiar with. It was super cool. And I think Chuck Peddle was like Skyping in. This is like when Skype was like cutting edge technology.
That was the 25th anniversary of the Commodore 64. 25th or 30th? 30th, probably. And Chuck was going. I was excited to see Chuck. So when he Skyped in, I was kind of disappointed. And then when the Skype crashed, I was even more disappointed.
It's fine. I don't even remember. I vaguely remember it crashing. I just remember it's so cool to see Chuck Peddle there. That was amazing.
Right. He was in Sri Lanka in real life.
Wow.
He got the Seagate factory.
He was pulling an Arthur C. Clarke. So VCF East is next weekend. Every year there's like a lot of just kind of like a theme. This year's theme I think is GUIs, but it's not like I think we did again, it's always like anniversaries. So a few years back, I'm gonna show some clips from that. We did the Commodore retrospective exhibit, which was that was just an absolute blast. But this year there's some really cool Commodore talks coming up. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen here. There we go. Okay, cool. So I got the Vintage Computer Festival East schedule coming up. And there's some really cool talks, Commodore talks. This one I actually really like. Thomas Jerryholmes is a really cool guy. Games development back in the day. But there is where is it? Oh man, I'm blowing it already. It's the It is under the, let's go to the schedule. Here we go. The Friday schedule, and it is going to be Commodore history. Dave McMurdy is going to interview Andy Finkel on Friday. Friday is usually the more of like the talks, and Saturday and Sunday are more of the exhibits. Also have talks as well.
Oh, Carney Day, Friday.
Carney
It's
Day.
for us, right? Because nobody has to work a table, and that's our day to get together and carry on. So if you want to see us all carrying on amongst ourselves, show up Friday too.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about who Andy Finkel is? I think Dave is a Commodore historian. He's going to be interviewing Andy. That's one of the coolest things about VCF East, in my opinion. It's in the shadows of Commodore's headquarters. So, a lot of former Commodore engineers still like live in the area, like
They're
yourself.
all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. So,
well, and I was going to say, when we found that out, I tried to get 10 Commodore people on stage like 5 years ago. And they're like, no, we don't want to do it. So I asked 10 more, and they're like, no, we don't want to do it. So I asked the last 10, and then the first 20 show up. So we had like 30 people on stage. And I'm like, oh, just get on stage, dude. So yeah, you can't schedule us.
No, that was awesome. I think last year it was either last year or the year before. It was a huge gathering of Commodore employees as well. That was an awesome one. Oh man, that was really really cool.
Hey, before we get going, you were going to PayPal me some money for this, man.
Yeah. That might have slipped through the cracks, but I'm good for it, Bill. I'm good for it. I'll promise before the stream's over, I'll send you something.
I demand you film a VCF and make your content available to people.
There you go. Okay, that's a good deal. So I mean, what I'm saying is, if for the folks who are watching, they're Commodore fans, they're thinking about coming to VCF East. They may not know who Andy Finkel is. Can you tell us a little bit about Andy?
Well, yeah, Andy suffers the same as a bunch of Commodore people, which is they're not loud and boisterous like me. You literally have to beat out of them the story sometimes. And Andy was one of our scribes because he was there in the early days, all the way through. I was a flash in the pan. He was there that whole run, and he knows where the bodies are buried. He absolutely does. So Andy's known for his T-shirt collection of being able to respond to. You could literally say, "Well, what about the Agnes, kerfluffle?" They'll pull out an Agnes kerfluffle T-shirt.
That was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I was just gonna go. There's a video of him pulling that out at the Commodore Roundtable. It was amazing. He's got this huge bag filled of T-shirts, and then as soon as you start talking about a topic, he's got a T-shirt for it. It was absolutely. It absolutely blows my mind. And like I said, there's so much education too at these events. Like I was a Commodore fan. I still am. I love using my Amiga. I love using my 64. But I didn't know, like growing up, I didn't know much about all the behind the scenes stuff. And you really get that at VCF East. You get the whole behind the scenes look at everything that happens, making some of these machines that would literally change many of our lives.
Yeah, we didn't have social media back then. In the concept, even if I had tweeted from the hardware lab a picture of what I was working on, I'd have been fired on the spot. Because the culture was like, it wasn't this wacky thing where people are looking everywhere and seeing everything.
Oh yeah, so, I'm thankful for no social media growing up as well. I can only imagine what it would have been. I've heard some stories, and we'll hear them soon about life at Commodore. I'm glad you guys didn't have social media either.
Great.
So that's
it has caused a recurrence of retro interest, I think.
Isn't it amazing how, it's funny because, my buddy Anthony and I, we talk about like the early 2000s. We say it was like the dark ages for retro and Commodore, but the golden age for collecting, because it felt like no one wanted these things. And Anthony picked up a Commodore 65 for, I'm not even going to say the price, but there were only 2 digits in the price. And people were like handing me Amigas. So like, oh, you still run that Amiga club? I've got an old Amiga, take it. And now things have changed. Oh, baby. I feel like back in like 2015, 2014, like things really shifted a lot. And there's just been this awesome retro resurgence.
Yeah. It's amazing. Because one of the shticks I do is to the people who survived, they rewrite history, right? And we all know who I'm talking about. They're a fruit-like object. But it's like they're like, we won. No, we actually invented it. Yeah, that's it. And we just have to sit and take it because we're gone. We're like, okay, you invented everything.
Yeah, it's well, they say history is written by the winners. But I mean,
Oh yeah.
another thing that I've heard you say often is that you designed these machines to last until Christmas. That was that you want to like get them out the door and make sure they were ready for Christmas, and you never expected them to work much longer than that, let alone 30,
It's
40 years later.
3 years. Yeah, yeah. My Sigma was around 3 years. If I spent any more money than what was required to get there, I was throwing money away by the way we thought. And you couldn't hold my job and throw money away. They just wouldn't approve.
No, exactly. It's how does it hasn't when you were making those machines back then. I can you obviously you weren't thinking about like changing the lives of people. I mean, I can imagine that like for example, with me with the Amiga, I was gravitated towards the Amiga because I'm a video guy, and obviously the Amiga was great with video and gen locks. Did you think that some of your work like literally changed the lives of people because it inspired them to pursue their careers?
Um, Not so much what I did. We were just trying to get work done, but you mentioned the Genlock. And when I saw that, I froze in my tracks and I went, nothing. Because I recognized what Genlock meant. And so a manager comes in, and Kerry Saggety, who got Genlock working, right? Kerry Saggety, we're all looking at it, and the manager looks, and we've got it overlaid, and he wants to know what he's looking at. And we all just turn and look at him, and we're like, go away now. You don't need to know what we're working on. But that was cool when that worked that first day. Think about it. The clock in the Amiga was wheezing to keep up with the VCR tape, right? It hadn't been done like that before.
That just it blows my mind, and that's one of the questions I was thinking about asking later. But now might be a good time. It's like, how do you go about like inventing something that doesn't exist yet? Like, does it just start out as like a crazy idea, and then you figure out how to do it? Like, what is that process like?
Um, well, the TED was done when I got there in concept, in strategy. And so my thing was to uh, finish finish the cycle and prove I could finish a cycle. So I finished the cycle, and then I finished the cycle, finished the cycle. By the way, you forgot the C232 in your long list. Uh,
Oh,
I only saw like five of those. But the reason there's a 128 is I was working on the LCD machine. I wasn't due to be done by CES, so I had a year off, right? I could work at a regular, normal person rate and not kill myself. And we knew that the Amiga wouldn't be done in time to go to production, right? I mean, we could show it, but it wasn't going to be under the tree. So and really, I'm talking about the next year. And it was like Fred Bowen and I looked at each other. It was like, we know how to make a computer. Meanwhile, the world's crumbling around us. Jack Tramiel has left. Management's running wild. I had locked one in the cabinet. Nobody even found him. He died in there. And it is just, it was survival of the fittest. So we did what we knew how to do, and we got a computer done. And in about 5 months, we were showing it in CS with 5 custom ICs. And the one thing I'm proud of with the 128 is that we got done. As a team, we said we're going to do it, and we did it. We were all children of the Tramiel age when you did what you said you're going to do.
and the 128 is a really special one because it's got two CPUs in it. I've heard, first of all, let's take once we're on the 128, let's take a step back. I heard that the way you got involved with the 128 was through a photocopy that was incorrect, an incorrect photocopy.
Yeah. I knew that when the logic analyzer probe lied to you, it was upset about ground. It meant contention and stuff. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to work, and I keep hearing this behind me. I don't understand why this is. Finally, I turn around and I look and I see it's doing that ground stutter thing. I said, "Give me your thing," and I look, and sure enough, it's photocopied wrong, and there's column missing on the PLA, which is like the second heart of the C64, if you want to think of it. And there's a column missing. So the chip selects all just turn on at once. So I turned at it, looked at it, and said, "You're missing a column. Your chick's on. Shut up." Turn around. So essentially, I troubleshot his problem. He spent all morning on it in about 10 seconds. And I just remember Fred Bowen looking over his glasses at me and then going, and I saw Fred looking at me, so I looked back at him, and that's the genesis of the 128, actually.
That's amazing because at the time you weren't on the 128 project, you were on the LCD project, right?
Right. Right. Me and Haney, I had already grabbed him for LCD, so I re-grabbed him to jump to the 128, and Jeff Porter went to became the top of the LCD, and he grabbed Ian Kirschman then as his lieutenant.
Oh, amazing. So, we were talking about your connection to Amiga earlier, and you were like, yeah, my connection to Amiga is actually that I hired Dave Haney. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about
Oh,
that?
right. My biggest contribution to the Amiga is I hired Dave Haney. That's absolutely correct. It's a force multiplier. Um, Hiring Dave made so much sense to me. I tried to learn from my good bosses and my bad bosses. And I had learned if I was going to hire somebody to help me, don't hire somebody that does what I do, that knows what I know. Hire somebody that's smarter than me, that knows the crap I don't know. And that was Dave Haney. Yeah, just made so much sense.
He's become, a legend in the Amiga community, and he's also extremely active coming to Amiga events as well as VCF East. Dave has talked a lot at VCF East as well. I think he did the you call the story of Commodore a Greek tragedy in three parts, right? do you want to tell us a little bit about explain the Greek tragedy to us? Because I think you handled part two and Dave Haney handled part three at VCF East.
Oh yeah, in the storytelling, right. So, I attribute part one to be the before days, right? The PET, and then the VIC 20 and the 64s that launched, and that's when I got there, is we were scrambling making the 64 work. And so I literally did wax on, wax off. A part of what I did was wax on, wax off, keeping the 64 running. Which was good because later I knew the 64 by a cold, by the next year. So, yeah, I forgot the question already.
Buzz Aldrin, Gordon Cooper, Scott Carpenter.
I'm getting someone just sorry, I'm getting a little
We're
raid.
the Pointer Sisters.
Thank you so much, Spider, with the raid. I appreciate that very, very much. So speaking of, let's just circle back to VCF East a little bit because I want to get back to Commodore as well. But I was thinking about you talking there, Dave Haney talking there. How would you describe VCF East? I heard someone describe it as a science fair. I mean, how would you describe VCF East experience?
Yeah, it's lots of buildings, and you travel through lots of rooms, and each room has kind of a different flavor to it. And then one of the big things I like about there is where we just hang out in groups. We'll find areas, and one guy coined it as saying holding court. We'll all just sit out, and there'll be people like Jerry Ellsworth sitting with us, Usagi Electric. It's just amazing who you can find in these groups.
And thank you for the raid, Spider. Welcome, Spider viewers. If you're just joining the stream, we are super lucky to have Commodore engineer Bill Hurd with us today. We're talking Vintage Computer Festival East, which is coming up next weekend in Wall Township, New Jersey. Also talking about his time at Commodore and some of the amazing projects that he worked on. So thank you all so much for joining today. Now, Bill, there are multiple Vintage Computer Festivals throughout the country, and I feel like each one's got their own personality, right? Would you say each one's like a little bit different?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I hit all but one last year. Southwest had a brand new VCF, and it was really good for. Whoa, there's an echo. Really good. Hold on. Is that me or you?
It sounds good now.
Okay. Me or you?
Oh, it's back.
So,
it's the beauty of live streaming.
Yeah, I shut everything off in case it was me. So, we were talking. Oh, so VCF. So we had a great thing at Southwest, and boy, there are a lot of vintage computer people in Texas. So in Texas, people are used to driving like 12 hours to get to lunch, you know. So they all just piled up in cars and came to that. And then we were at West at the Computer History Museum, which is always pretty cool, the heart of Silicon Valley. And then Midwest was huge this year, and it was just buckets of fun. Like 4 or 5 huge rooms. So yeah, it's kind of like an AA meeting. If you don't like the first VCF you go to another one, and keep doing it until you find one you like.
Oh yeah, I heard things get a little bit wild at Midwest. I haven't been to that one yet though. I heard that one's wild.
Well, somebody showed up with a wig, Taylor and Amy, and the wig made its rounds throughout everything and got worn by lots of people, and it tended to reduce the intelligence in the room.
Well, you talk VCF. There's lots of unexpected things that can happen. You never know who you're going to run into. And I think one of your favorite VCF East memories involves your friend Greg and my friend Anthony. Do you want to tell us that story?
You want to just cue it up, or
yeah, you want? Sure, let's cue it up. Let me. I've got a link here. Let's see, I've got it here somewhere. Commodore LCD. Oh man, I got so many notes here. Here we go. This is. Yeah, here it is. Let's cue it up. Do you want to just watch it? Do you want to set it up, or should we just watch it?
Yeah, I'll give you a 2 sentence backstory. So Anthony innocently is sitting there talking about Amiga 4000, and I leave the room, and he thinks, well, all right. And I go out. I didn't know it, but I asked Greg Berlin. I said, "Do you do the 4000?" He goes, "Yeah, come with me." And so here's what happened when I took Greg back into Anthony's meeting.
Thing is, there's other things in there, and that's these capacitors. You have one instance where there's a wrong capacitor type. That's the audio circuit. They discovered it in the 4000. It's probably in every Amiga, and that'll eventually cause audio to go out. And all you have to do to get your audio back is replace those capacitors with the right ones. The other problem is the backwards installed capacitors, and this is a big problem in the 4000. And I believe it's a polarized capacitor that's in the audio circuit that he says is the wrong type. And this is the backwards installed capacitors. And this is a very big problem on the CPU card that's in the 4000.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah, sure.
This is Greg Berlin, who designed the Amiga 4000.
Maybe he can tell us about the audio capacitor then. After I said good things to him.
So,
anyway,
the reason why I went and got him was you were saying that there was the wrong kind of capacitor in the audio circuit. Is this something you knew about and you messed up, or is this?
It's wrong.
So,
I've never had my audio go out on my machines. I have heard this happen where audio on an Amiga goes out, and it's because of a polarized capacitor in the audio circuit that is... Yeah. And this guy has a whole write-up.
It should be, if you polarize that, if the negative goes towards the load, it should be okay. But they may have used like a bad kind of cap or something.
It could be.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Were you having a bad week, or what's up, man?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
this is a crazy time to interact with
no,
one of these
that's
guys,
good.
right?
Hey, I'm all for that. What this guy says is it's in the 4000, but chances are it's just the same circuit was carried
So I love the
forward
expression on
from
his
other
face
Amigas. This was the audio circuits.
he
It's really not
realized. You
changed
can
much
see it takes
from
about
Amiga
3
to
seconds
Amiga,
for him to realize
except that
who Greg Berlin is.
Yeah, no, it was a classic moment, a classic VCF East moment. Anthony's in there saying they installed the capacitors backwards a lot, and then you run out because I think you were actually in a screening of the 8-bit generation, and you grabbed Greg, and in comes Greg, and Greg's a big guy with a deep voice.
Hey. Yeah, we used to go to the bars together, close out the bars together, and being 6'8", there was always somebody that's like, "How tall is your friend? You want to fight?" So I like, yeah, but you have to fight me first. And that would like take all the fun out of it because they don't know. I might stick them in the eye or something, or they may kick my ass, but now they're a little tighter, right? So, and nobody wanted to fight Greg if they had to fight the long-haired weird guy with him.
That touches on a little bit of that Commodore culture that we're talking about. Man, it's wild that I've heard lots of stories of some of the shenanigans that happened at Commodore. I've even heard like a story about you. Like, did you crawl through a ceiling at some point, Bill?
Okay. So the backstory is that when they did the Easter egg for the C-128, when they did von Ertlein's name, there was a bar above the V. There was an error in the font ROM. So they had to say, without telling them how they found it, because they found it with the Easter egg, that they needed a new font ROM. So I got this chart. I taught myself how to do these charts. I didn't know they're called perk charts. Everybody knows how to do them. I just thought I was inventing them. And I'm like, okay, well, slide it right in. I'll put that font ROM right. And the dang head of programmers manager speaks up and says, well, I think that should be under software control. And I'm like, fine, you got it. Need it on my desk in a week. Do whatever testing you need. 3 days go by. You got that wrong? Oh, we're working on it. You got that wrong? We're working on it. Finally, the day comes and goes. I went into his office on Friday, crawled up over the ceiling and get that white shit all over you. Excuse my language. The soundproofing material all over you. And it dropped down. I took it sitting in his drawer in the pencil tray. I mean, it's like, So I took it back. I released it to MOS. So basically, I gave permission to do an $800,000 run. We go ahead. We go to the next meeting, and he's like, "Well, it's still under evaluation." And I looked at him. I went, "You lie! You lie!" And I pointed at him every time I said it. I said, "I released that to MOS a week ago. You lie!" It was just every time he'd open his mouth to give me crap, I'd go, "You lie!"
Oh, that's hilarious. Now, I've heard a few stories about that guy. Is he the same one that did the infamous like loading dock drop test story?
No, this was Julian. The what was the not Shane McShane? No, McShane. I'll think of his name. No, that was the QA guy. We called him. So it was the QA guy that dropped a printer. So the TED was an entire ecosystem of computers. It had 2 types of printers. It had a monitor. They were all this cool charcoal gray. Housings designed by Ira Volinsky. And so we had new printers for it. And these printers are horribly expensive. Probably cost $120K for 33 of them, I'm thinking. Right? That sounds familiar to me. So he throws one on the floor and it breaks. And he comes and he reports it to us. And my answer was, I said, wow, through the packing material, because he said it displaced a part. He said packing material, and everybody, I stopped talking because I let the room tell him about how a drop test works. So we're like, well, at least we have 2 more we can do it. And he goes, well, we tested all 3. And I'm like, you kept testing after the first one shattered. You know, I was like, I picture parts sliding out into the hallway, right? From these guys chucking these 120K printers. So that's what we were left with after Jack Tramiel was gone. Without the wolves, the sheep multiplied.
That's unbelievable. I mean, you should. How do you know? Like, they were dropping the printer, these expensive printers, basically the height of a loading dock, without using the shipping container.
Without the shipping container, that's right.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's so. What was So you said you're one of the unique people that got to work at Commodore, for Jack Tramiel, and then after Jack Tramiel left, that's pretty unique. So can you tell us a little bit about like what it was like working with Jack and how things changed after Jack left?
And that's what I call Act 2. If Act 1 is the pet era, Act 2 is that transitional era from when Jack left us to when we became something else. And that's the era I hung out in. So I was very fortunate to work for Jack. It is how I engineer today. And I've become good friends with Albert Charpentier, designer of the VIC chips and the Commodore 64. And son of a gun, if we don't have the same Jack attitudes, we laugh at it. We're like, all right, and we're in sync that way. So we're children of that culture.
That Jack culture, the Jack attack, right? But that's a pretty legendary thing called the Jack attack.
Yep.
You're
trying to get me to talk about it.
Yeah, I am trying to get because it reminds me of something funny. I can tell you like a little story on my end. I recently I'm doing a project. It's a documentary about Martha Stewart, and folks are like, oh boy, you're gonna work with Martha, and like they were telling me like these horror stories. They were calling her like a bee and all that stuff. And I was like, well, I hear all that, but I always judge a person based on the way I interact with them and the way they treat me. So I show up, and I'm doing this show with her, and she's very tough. She's very tough and very demanding, but she's also very tough and very demanding on herself. And basically, she pushes everyone to do their best and to give 120%. And she does it like in a stern way, but she also leads by example. For example, one day we were shooting at her house, and her folks didn't finish like mowing one of the yards, and she's like, "Oh, they didn't have time to finish. It was time for them to go home." She hopped on the mower and mowed it herself. I was like, "Whoa!" When we were doing another shoot, and this, I was shooting her pool. She's got this amazing pool. I was like, okay, we're going to shoot it around 5:35 p.m. The light's going to be perfect. The sun's going to backlight it. Boom. So I shot it. It looked great. I'm like all proud of myself. And she calls up and she goes, Bill, like, when are you going to shoot the pool? I'm like, oh, Martha, I just did. And she goes, you just did? She goes, did you shoot it with the blueberry martinis? And I was like, no, I didn't shoot it with the blueberry martinis. And in my head, I'm like, I didn't know blueberry martinis were an option. She goes, why didn't you shoot it with the blueberry martinis? You have to shoot it with the blueberry martinis. And I was like, sorry, Martha, I didn't know. And then so she, it was a little bit harder on people. She's like, oh, make sure you have the blueberry martinis. They brought out the blueberry martinis. We shot it again, and it looked better. Like Martha knew it was good. She strives for the best. And she expects everyone around her to do their best, and it's hard if you're not the type of person that likes to do their best. It can be challenging, and she can come across tough. But I loved it because she was actually had a lot of respect for us. I had a lot of respect for her, and we all really did our best. Is that kind of like a Jack Tramiel way of doing things?
I think so. I didn't know Jack at the time. Jack spoke to us through Shiraz Shivji, the guy that hired me. And he was well known himself in lots of other venues also. And if you said you were going to have it done, you'd better have it done when you said you'd have it. All right? Especially if you picked the date. But the other one, and that went along with the culture of CES shows where you can't move those things by even 10 minutes. They just don't move. I called one, said, hey, can we do it the next week? They're like, nope. So, yeah. Jack, you also got the feeling with Jack. So I was behind Jack in the cafeteria one day. You talk about your Martha Stewart story. and Jack had a guest with him. And I remember Jack reached for his wallet and paid for him and his guest when he could have walked through the cafeteria of the company he built and just walked through the line. But he reached and he paid for him and his guest. I remembered that. So that's a Jack story that doesn't seem like it means much, but I think it says a lot about Jack.
It's those little things that really make a difference. You know, he was just investing back into his company that he believed in, you know. And what was it like? What did you notice when he left? Because you mentioned that you know, things were changing.
Fights in the halls, the tear gas, screams, chickens, hay. It's just cats and dogs sleeping together. Just, you know, I'm still in therapy. It was the best time of my life. Absolutely. Because everything I just said was true. It was just an animal house. And we had animals. We were very much at home in that. I mean, we could party and produce a new computer with 5 new custom chips in 5 months. I mean, that's how we thought.
That culture must have been incredible. I know you talked about sleeping in your office. You got some stories about that. And you were just, it's because nowadays I think things are different. People aren't going to work extra hours unless they're getting their overtime. But I think you guys must have really believed in what you were doing, because obviously you were, you know, putting in the time, sleeping in offices, and you said you cared most about like getting it done. That was the most important thing for you, right?
Yeah. And it got a little easier as we got closer to CES, because people didn't want to be known as the guy that screwed up the 128 right before CES. So they started giving me the rope to hang myself with. And instead, you know, I used the rope to get the thing done. So yeah, it was, I forgot kind of part of the question there though. See, I'm getting old.
Well, no, once about the culture at Commodore, but once we're talking about CES, you know, I heard some interesting stories about the Commodore 128 and CES. How when you showed up, and Greg Berlin, who we just saw there, you looked at some flyers that were printed up, and it said the C 128 100% Commodore 64 compatibility and expandable to 512K of RAM, right? I mean, that was something that you guys were just maybe chatted about doing, but it wasn't quite ready yet. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that's actually backward from the way it was planned. Fred and I just said, well, let's start with C64 compatibility, because the thing they were working on was like a 6809 with a VIC chip, and it's like, well, who are you selling that to? Business that aren't C60, and my brain slipped a track there again. We were talking about
the 512K and the 64 Commodore 64 compatibility at CES, yeah.
So we said that, so marketing got a hold of it, and they started talking about 100% compatible. And that was well before the CES show, and we just took it as a challenge. We're like, oh, well, all right, you said it. And I'd read articles, written, interviews of the project manager for the 128, and it's somebody I've never heard of. I'm like, and he's talking about the 512K expandability. I'm like, I should meet this person. So I go down and introduce myself and said, why don't you come to R&D with me, and I'll show you where the computers are made. And so I brought him into the fold. But yeah, so my job was to bring all these things together right on time, right? Via the per truck. And I had the 512K version of the MMU was going to land right on time. I'm there expecting it. My boss walked up and urinated on the project plan and said, no, let's not do that. There's no time. Well, there was time. I've been proving all along I was a master of time. And so my boss, so that he could feel good about his job, decided not to let the MMU through that would do the 512K. So, but nobody told marketing that, of course. And so, yes, we get to Las Vegas, and it's on the billboard. There's the computer, right? And we're standing in the airport holding that flyer up you're talking about so we can see, and laughing. So the other part of that story is Marshall Smith then comes in to do a dog and pony show in the R&D lab, and he wants to know where to plug in the 512K expansion that we don't have. And my boss on a cigar and said, in the back. So basically we all looked at each other and we just left the dog and pony meeting and started. That's where the REU came from. Me, Frank, Freddie, Terry, and Haney sat down and said, how do we do this? GMA is the only answer. Well, let's put the hooks in now. Okay. And REU.
Amazing, Bill. thank you for sharing that. Lady Isla Rose, thank you for the raid. Lady is also doing Bill. Getting back to VCF East for a second. We'll come back to Commodore in a minute, but
we'll never
Lady
talk much.
Lady is streamer, amazing streamer here on Twitch, and Lady Isla Rose and myself, Dan's Macintosh Lab, Ron's Macintosh Lab, and Ash said hi. We're doing a streamer panel on Friday afternoon. So thank you for the raid, Lady A, as I call you. I'm excited to do that with you. Very excited. So thank you for the raid. Bill, so getting back to the 128. About the questions. Folks are asking questions in the chat, and I want to leave a little time at the end to answer them. I'm trying to copy and paste them into my Google document, but if you guys do it, if I don't ask the question, just ask it again. It just means I missed, because I'm trying to multitask, see your questions and talk to Bill at the same time. But getting back to the CES for a minute, I think I read somewhere that you were saying that at that one of the CES shows, there was a woman software engineer who was concerned about all of her software for the Commodore 64 not being able to run on the 128, and that may have been the genesis for your ideas about the compatibility, the backwards compatibility.
It did run on the TED. So whereas TED had 121 colors but no sprites, it was meant to be a $49 or a $79 office machine. But without Jack Tramiel there, our marketing people said, we know how to sell 64s. Yes, it's another 64, and it's not compatible. And she said that I spent most of a year writing this program. I can still see the little creatures that when you did a math question correctly, it'd get all excited and be happy for you. And she said, that won't work on your newest computer. And I was kind of new to Commodore, so I'm like, log it. I don't understand it yet, but I'll log it. So yeah, that absolutely. In fact, there's a memo that the lawyers wanted to see later, written by myself, called "Yes, Virginia, there is compatibility." Now, half the words are misspelled in the memo, but that's what you get for having a long hair around.
Yeah, that's cool. It's amazing how all the stuff just kind of flows together. Like you listen to one thing and it gives you an idea, and you guys put it into action. You also when you were part of our exhibit, with the Commodore retrospective exhibit, you were talking about the design of the Commodore 128 because it looks similar to the Amiga 500. What's the connection there?
Well, we lost Ira Valinsky, our housing designer, to Atari. You may have heard of them. And so we got Min Luong from Franklin. And if you remember, they made Apple clones. And he did the 128 design. And so the simple connection is, and then he did the A500 design.
So it's the same designer did the 128 and the 500. You can tell that they look very similar.
Right, in the same mode of here's what Commodore's look will be like,
So the whole line, all the Commodore lines, the Commodore computers would have a similar style. They would all be a cohesive style.
Yeah. Then I leave, and somebody asked about why Commodore, like the Amiga 3000 or the 4000 or something, when we had everybody on stage. And Headley Davis just called it what it is. He said, well, it's a piece of shit housing. We had no business making it like that. But that's the kind of management we were into by then. And there was no plan, for that. They can say they had one, but if the end effect is it acts like there was no plan, there was no effective plan.
That makes a lot of sense, Bill. I'm looking at the design, and I think the top part where those air vents are, was that designed to put a monitor on?
Yep, probably. That was our whole thing. So two things with that. One, it's a huge footprint, right? Well, one of the most expensive components in one of these computers is the PC board itself. And they're made to a panel in a machine. Well, you could fit 2 panels exactly on that. If you made them 10% smaller, you could still fit 2 panels on it. You couldn't get any. So it might as well be big. So we might as well set the monitor on it, and that becomes the reason. So it was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. When I saw I didn't think of it, but the guy that thought of, setting the monitor on it. And what people may not know is the monitor for the 128 only has back legs. So that you set the front of it on the monitor or on the computer, and the back legs make it level.
Very, very interesting. So that seems intentional, but the monitor's designed that way. That's awesome.
Well, check your 1902. You may have little legs in the back, little feet. Just feel around for them if they snap down.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll definitely have to check that out. And speaking of monitors, you turn around the back of the 128, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time I saw RGB on an 8-bit computer. That was pretty revolutionary at the time, Bill.
8-bit 80 column. Right, yeah. I almost put a 6845 in it, and it would have been fine. I would have thrown color planes at it, done this thing. And we had a leftover chip from the Z8000 called the 8563, and that thing damn near sunk us before CES, before we got a handle on that chip. But yeah, it was Fred Bowen and we would tell management after it was too late to change what we had decided to do. So we'd wait about a week and a half before we say, by the way, it's 80 column now.
That's is the chip you're talking about? Is that the one that had a bit of you kind of came up with a creative way to keep it cool on your way to CES?
Not me, but for cooling, the way von Ertwein had kept his working while he developed CPM was he would take the Buttercup butter warmer out of a popcorn machine and put an ice cube on it and set it on the chip, and he was good for 20 minutes per cube.
That's amazing.
So we get to CES. Vaughn was using like an old rev of the chip. We give him a new rev. We start showing, and there's this bug that nobody told Vaughn about. It looked like the Matrix. It was leaving characters behind. So we're like, oh, Vaughn, okay, yeah, you were using the old chip. We need this. Vaughn he couldn't recompile CPM, but he could go in and edit the disk. And he re-edited the disk on the night of CES and made the code changes with the disk editor. And it's like, and that was like, okay, what next?
That's amazing. I guess they can throw anything at you, and you guys came through.
We're having a blast.
It kind of reminds me of the story of like Dave Needle and RJ Michael making the Boeing demo like the night before in their room. That's like, it's incredible stuff.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Yeah, it was sad, the passing of Dave Needle.
Yeah, that was really sad. I've got I want to take a look at this. I got a little clip here. I'm showing. I'm gonna put it on the screen here. We were talking about the 80 column mode on the 128 and the RGB, and it was pretty amazing. This is our friend Doug Crawford, who also exhibits at VCF East, and he had a really cool like 128 setup. He's basically running. It's basically like a dual monitor mode, right? Like you can run 2 monitors simultaneously.
Our secret use for the 128 is we pictured it being a programmer's computer where you're writing your 60, your 30, your 40 column game on one thing, you're writing it on the 80 column and seeing your output on the 40 column. And we thought that'd be a cool thing. So we made sure that they were both available at the same time. It's not either or, it's and.
That's that's amazing. Voxeltrots, who's going to be doing Dave Test, who's going to be doing the exhibit with me at VCF East. He's got a question for you. I'm gonna try and ask all your questions at the end, but this one is appropriate for right now. He was saying, Bill, did you ever imagine folks using both the 40 and the 80 column outputs at the same time? There was a recent release of Eye of the Beholder for the Commodore 128 that takes advantage of this mode.
They're both there at the same time. Now the operating system, so it wants to know what mode do you want to be on. But you can be in 40 column mode and make stuff appear on the 80 and vice versa. So and that's how we did it. We started the 2-monitor craze, if you want to think of it that way, because we all had to go around and steal a second monitor from somebody.
You had to go around Commodore and say, "Hey, do you have a second monitor?" Oh, that's wild.
I got one for you. The keyboard layout on the 128, if you look at it, is exactly a VT 100 layout. The reason is I went, grabbed somebody's VT 100 keyboard and gave it to mechanical designers and said, here, make the keyboard look like this. So meanwhile, this guy is wondering who took his keyboard. It's over in mechanical being copied. But no, I look down, I use the VT100 every day, and I'm like, that's a good enough keyboard. Why would I make a new layout when this is a perfect layout?
Why mess with something if that works, right?
Right. And the fact I had muscle memory, all the better. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. Sorry, I'm trying to juggle the sound here. So what was the nickname for the Commodore 128? The barn door holder? Is that what it was called?
I call it a door stop. And actually, I was the first that stuck a Sinclair under a door as a door stop. And there's a whole story where I got the Sinclair from. But then marketing did it, and they thought they were cute. But the 128, I make no judgments about. I know what the 128 is, and I know what it isn't. And as I said, it was us sticking a finger in the dike of the wall, right? Meant to just get us to the next.
Is that what the one, because it came out at a unique time? Was it basically like a bridge between the 8-bits and the Amiga?
Right. And so we weren't being strategic. I've had people say, looking at the long-term thing, you should have chosen 8086 instead of a Z80 if you were trying to get behind an OS system that would last 20 years. No. I had these cartridges that didn't work, so I took the Z80 album and put it on the main board. It was that simple. I say that, but only for Commodore would that be simple, where you could, we had a chip fab right below us. It's get a chip made.
You're touching on something I want to circle back to too, with your beginnings at MOS Technology, and having a chip fabrication facility like right next door must have been huge. Now I'm losing my train of thought. I was going to ask you a question about the. Oh yeah, so I've heard you describe the 128 as 9 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag, because you've got so much stuff in there. You've got the
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you call it that?
Well, I couldn't get 10 pounds to fit. So it's 9 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag. So I also I think of the 128 as the box that the Commodore 64 came in. The one's the big clunky thing, and the other one's the cool thing. But we got you covered on the big clunky thing too.
Three browser machines. Sorry about that echo. Hazemaker is asking, why is there a shift and a caps lock key?
That was my idea. I think it was my idea. If it wasn't my idea, it was like Fred's idea, and I said yes right away, or Terry thought of it, and we said yes. So we all wanted that. Yeah, it probably wasn't my idea, but felt like it. Um, and 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 then Terry said we've got the 3-key problem, which is a phantom key problem. If you press 3 keys on a keyboard in a matrix, it'll see a 4th key. So guess what? Shift lock, caps lock, and a key. Then you break the keyboard. So we had to like hook the caps lock right to the processor. I mean, it was the most arcane thing. But we're like, okay, next problem.
Amazing, Bill. So you sound like you're, I mean, you should be proud of the 128. What is it? Like you said, 9 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag. Wait, what was that 10th thing? Like, what would you have liked to add to it that you just couldn't or didn't have time to?
I pretty much got everything in because I tailored my thinking, right? I spent 3 weeks doing the architecture. After that 3 weeks, doors started closing. Now I slipped in a Z80, and then the time when, trust me, 3 weeks later, I couldn't have put in a Z80 because that version of the board was done then that had all the buses on it and stuff. So what we did actually is every 3 weeks we had a brand new PC board. So it was kind of like this agile software. We'd never heard of that word, but every 3 weeks we'd make a new 128 work. So we were never more than 3 weeks from a working unit, as we approached CES shows.
Yeah, I imagine the deadline with the 128. You're talking deadlines must have been really important because of it when it came out in '85, like right before the Amiga. There couldn't have been any delays at all.
No. And yeah, we got done with about 2 hours to spare. True and literally 2 hours to spare. I went, took a shower and a nap. I was like, oh, good, that's done. And we got on the bus at like 4 in the morning and go to the airport, so it was like shower and a nap.
Oh, that's amazing, Bill. All right, on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
That's wow. I want to do questions for Bill. I know a lot of you guys are asking questions. I'd love to get some of those in, but you just mentioned like MOS, and I would love just to hear a little bit about like your beginnings. I know you grew up in Indiana, then you ended up moving out to Pennsylvania, and your first job at Commodore was actually working at MOS. I don't think people really understand MOS and how it was a chip fabrication, like literally like right next to Commodore. Could you tell us a little bit about your early beginnings, with Commodore?
Yeah, they hired me as a technician, told me I was going to be a programmer then when I got there because they left a bunch of programs for me. And I wandered off to the hardware lab and became a hardware engineer by the end of the week. But like you said, we had a chip fab below us. That connection to our own chips, we blew everybody out of the water. I mean, TI could make some chips, and stuff, but that was us, man. So that was part of my first days at Commodore, and I parked my first day in the wrong place at MOS. They have this sprinkler. We had polluted the groundwater with heavy metals and volatile organic compounds, and so they had a sprayer to spray this stuff in the air. Well, I parked where it could land on my car. I come out, all these leaves are stuck to my car. I mean, like stuck. And it's like, but I work at Commodore. I work at MOS. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. I mean, it kind of blows my mind back then, but it blows my mind even more now because I know a lot of my friends, a lot of folks who come to the streams, they're amazing and they do great hardware projects, but it's always like I'm gonna put together this design, then I have to send it to China, and then they send me back the PCB. It must have been like such an advantage having a chip fabrication plant, like literally at your place of work. That must have been helped so much with the deadlines and helped you guys like debug and just accelerate the pace so much, right?
Yeah. And allowed us to hide budgeting overruns, stuff like that. MOS lost money most likely, and that's where we hid some of the how much I paid for the VIC chip on the 128. Okay.
I understand that one of a client of MOS, it wasn't MOS didn't make chips just for Commodore. Is it true that Atari bought chips from MOS as well?
Absolutely. We had there was a poster in Elton Southard's, the president of MOS, in his office, and it was a Santa Claus with a bag of chips going, "We'll have your chips on time," and a bag of ROMs. And that was the days of the Atari 2600. So ROMs were the lifeblood of Christmas. So now I thought I had heard an urban legend that Jack waited till the last minute and then screwed everybody, right? Said, "You can't have your ROMs. You're a competition. What are you doing buying from us in the first place?" And I thought that through. I said, that doesn't sound right because the timing's wrong. In years, the Atari revolution was 4 years earlier than, than the time I'm talking about.
You have to be careful when you buy essential parts for your product from your competitor, right?
Great. So there is a true urban legend where Jack and his minions would order a large quantity of electronic parts, FOB, this place in Japan, and then cancel the order. They'd flood the market trying to get their money back, and that's when he would buy the market back up. I believe that one.
That's smart business practices. I'm actually looking. So anyway, folks who are just joining the stream, thank you guys so much for the raids. I really Italian Grandma, Lady A, appreciate you all the new folks who are joining. Today we are joined by Bill Hurd, Commodore engineer, worked on incredible projects like the TED systems, the Commodore 128. The Commodore LCD. Oh, we got to talk about the LCD a little bit too. That's a really neat one. But once we're talking, he started out at MOS. It's so funny. A lot of people call it MOS. I called it MOS for a long time, Bill, and then I realized it's actually called MOS. But this is one of my favorite YouTube videos of recent times. You kind of, I don't know if you sneak in or what you did, but you went into the old chip fabrication plant there in Pennsylvania, the old MOS plant. This video is super, super cool. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this video?
There was somebody that had been sold scrapping rights, and they were in there scrapping, and they had found some C65s and asked around about them and posted to the VCF East bulletin board, but they weren't approved for 3 days before he was allowed to post. During that time, he threw away the C65. That's when I met him then, and I had him describe it. So now he's reached out to the thing, and I triangulated on him, called him directly, said, "Yeah, you let me in, right, man?" He goes, "Yeah, man." So that was it. I got in with the scrapper. But I believe that, yes, he threw away 2 or 3. They could only have been 65s.
Yeah, the 65 is definitely a valuable piece. Anthony is very proud of his Commodore 65, and I can't even imagine like throwing them out. It's so cool to see this walkthrough. I mean, it's sad as well, but it's it really puts it into perspective. Like, wow, we actually like made chips, in Pennsylvania, in this country. It was my friend used to work for a place called Semi Alloys in Yonkers, New York, and they did the gold plating on some of the chips that were in Tomahawk missiles, and it was like there was like a lot of manufacturing around here. I had a General Motors plant right down the street from my house here, and it's just it's sad to see this. I just did a job in Pittsburgh recently, and now some of those steel mills have been turned into film studios, which is where I was shooting. But when you see like the scale of these things, and it's just it's really sad. It's really sad to see stuff like this.
Yeah. It was very weird to stand inside the windows of the front lobby and look out one last time, and remember walking up to those same windows the first day of work.
It's like everything kind of came full circle, but so many years later. Yeah, speaking of videos, that this also reminds me of Dave Haney's deathbed vigil video, and I know that's a tough one for you, right?
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I start to watch it, and then I just go no. I hear Berlin's voice, I turn it off.
Yeah, he's on I think he's pulling RAM chips out of a board. He's sitting on the floor pulling RAM chips out.
I'll take some with me. Yeah, it's like I already knew the story, so to have them start it like that, I'm going, I don't need to watch the stories I know that happened after I was gone and couldn't do anything to help anybody. You know, all I could hear was these horror stories coming out of Commodore. And at one point, I'm like, all right, put me in, coach. Let me come back. And they're like, yeah, right.
Why did you leave Commodore?
I thought we were going to be closed, and I didn't want to be on the street with all my friends that had degrees. So I was jumping first, and I did. I landed a job as director of engineering. Just turns out their main job was getting investors to give them money to get the product done rather than getting the product done. Of course, I'm a child of Tramiel. I'm like, I keep grabbing the product and running it across the finish line. They're like, would you stop doing, make it look harder so we can get more money.
We're looking at the so you kind of saw the writing on the wall. You saw that it was.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My guardian angel had left, Adam Schwanier, the vice president, and the people I had pissed off really, really bad, finishing the 128. There's nobody to control them at that point.
Understood. We're talking about MOS and the chip fabrication, and Voxeltrots has got a great question. He's asking, do you think it would be feasible for a modern chip fabrication to make a run of old school chips like SID, CIA, Agnes, etc., or is the process so small now they wouldn't be able to make chips from that era?
Well, it doesn't. I'd call it an emulation. You'd be emulating the characteristics of old NMOS. The processes aren't even related. I was just talking with Albert Charpentier a week ago about that, and we were trying to remember how big our gates were. We're like, was it a micron? Holy crap, a micron? Really? We're at 10,000ths of a micron now. Jesus. So yeah, could somebody do it? Sure.
I think that the FPGAs, right? The FPGAs, that's a pretty cool thing that's happening now.
So yeah, and obviously FPGAs can't do analog, and the SID is analog. But there's been SID answers out for a long time, and I don't know what those are.
Got you. A lot of folks heard Commodore 65, and they're talking about the Mega 65. Have you heard about the Mega 65 project?
Retrocombs is like hot on it, but I don't actually know what it is.
It looks like a neat project. It's kind of like a new Commodore 65. It's you've got that printer. You want new SIDs? I know the SIDs are really cool. Bill, I meant to show you, but I have it in my basement. There's this cool thing called a SID blaster that came out, and it lets you take a real SID chip and put it on a board, and then you can connect it via USB to your modern computer. So like when you emulate Commodore 64, 128 through C64 Forever, Vice, you can actually get the SID output and hear the SID sound. It's cool. Really neat. Yeah, I love it. It's really, really cool.
He says, I'll just characterize it, throw it into a wavetable, run an FFT on it, digress it, and then store it.
Yeah, totally. So folks, Bill, we've been chatting for about an hour now. I think that's pretty awesome. I appreciate your time very much. Maybe we can open it up to some questions.
Give me 1 minute to figure out your questions. I'll be right back.
So folks, if you have a question for Bill, I grabbed a couple during the stream. Okay, Voxel, I've got yours. I've got, what does he think about the 68,000 lines of CPUs? I don't know who asked that one. Sorry about that, but that's good. Please do at Amiga Bill if you have a question for Bill Hurd. And it's been awesome. SIDs are only allowed to be in a 64 and 128. Yeah, I think this. I get it. You like this, Tony Rocks? Nice. You guys enjoying it so far? Oh, Doom Noob, you did. Okay, great. Doom Noob. Got it. We'll ask that. Boom. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. If you have any other questions, do add Amiga Bill, and I'll ask him. Wait, Proton Fig, did you have a question too? I think Proton might have had. Oh, Doom Noob, I see. Does Bill have any feelings on the competing platform? Good one, Doom Noob. I like it.
There are no competing platforms.
There we go. So that's a good question. Yeah, Doomney was asking, do you have any feelings about the competing platforms like the Apple II GS? It had some impressive expandability options, as I understand it, even though we're all Commodore folks here.
Yeah, we dusted the GS. I thought it was a joke. And I did get, Bill Mensch did give me a message because he did the 816 they used. He said, you won that year. So I was like, well, Bill, it wasn't a competition. You did the 6502 I use also. So you were on both sides. But he likes Apple. Bill Mensch, the designer, the mother of the 6502. Chuck Peddle being the father. Yeah, he liked Apple way better than Commodore. He thought we were the evil overlords that came in and ruined it. I believe.
Oh, thanks, Phil. I'm just asking questions now. Dave Test Voxel Trots is asking. Besides hiring Dave Haney, did you get a chance to get any hands-on with any other Amiga engineers?
Well, who are Amiga engineers? Greg Berlin, worked with him since, he did the drives for the 120. Headley Davis helped bring him in, right? Fred Bowen, you go down the list. They were the same people doing the 8-bit stuff. It's the next year.
I think you mentioned Jeff Porter. You guys were working on the Commodore LCD together, right? Did you have?
Yeah.
I also worked with Gail Wellington recently. Did you cross paths with Gail?
Yeah, Gail was in England when I was there. I believe she was head of England, Commodore England, or had a very high up spot there.
Got it. Yeah, so there was definitely some crossover. Speaking of Amiga stuff, what do you think? Doom Noob is asking, what do you think about the Motorola 68000 line of CPUs when compared to the later 6502 based CPUs?
So I had a conversation with Bill Mensch, mother of the 6502. He called me, and he's trying to talk me into that 816. I'm like, Bill, we're going to go with the 68,000. It's just where it is. And he asked me, he said, why? I said, registers, memory. And he goes, well, those registers are just all stuff you have to save when you get an interrupt. And I'm like, I think we're done talking. It's like, and I have my opinions of the later stuff, but I won't share them on the air.
Gotcha. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Oh, here's a good one from Porthal. It sounds like you have, you hold Jack Tramiel in high regard. Did you think of joining Atari when he went there?
No, I wasn't asked. And I think one of the reasons I wasn't asked, they knew I was busy and they knew what kind of person I was. I was on the 128 at that time, and I wasn't going to come off of it. Now, at that CES show, I walked over to the Atari booth, which is a whole nother story. And there was Jack coming down the steps. I knew every single person surrounding him, so I walked right into the middle of it and said, hi, Mr. Tramiel, Bill Hurd, ex-engineer, so, and when I was done talking to him, he was gracious. We chatted briefly, right? 3 sentences forth. But then Sig Hartman, the former head of programmers or software and all at Commodore, throws an arm around me and said, Jack was serious about the offer he just made you. I'm like going, all right, he must have made one and I missed it. But he had already nodded. They were already schmoozing me then to get me to Atari at that point.
Gotcha. So you didn't hear of any offer, but it sounds like some people thought there may have been one.
Oh, I could have. Well, and the crazy thing, a few years later, I got real pissed with living on the East Coast. I wanted to go out on the West Coast. And so I wrote a resume. I was going to send it to Next Computer for jobs, right? And I just never dropped it in the mail. Everything was done. Well, son of a gun, I find out that the head of the R&D lab for Next Computer that year was Shiraz Shivji, the guy that had hired me at Commodore. So,
Unbelievable.
and I still get along with him to this day. So I'm pretty sure I would have had an opportunity had I dropped that stupid envelope in the mail.
That's unbelievable. It's, I always think about that, how, sometimes just little small decisions in life just lead you down a dramatically different path compared to the one that you went on. But I also believe that, everything happens for a reason, and so you didn't, I think there was a reason why that letter didn't get mailed out,
So, I'll give you an example of those intersections where a decision and everything. So one year I am walking in one of those software things at the mall. I see a book on ray tracing. I actually back up 2 steps, bend down, pick it up, look at persistence of vision ray tracing. I learned to ray trace. I make this cool flashing thing for ADP, the company I work for. I introduced to the photographer who used it in a film, who introduces me to my wife, and now I have a kid. So because that my son exists because I stepped backwards 2 steps and bent down and pulled that book out of the bookshelf.
That's amazing. Talk about a life-changing experience, right? Just a small thing. That's amazing. Does your son come to the VCF East? I would love to meet him one day.
He was there one year. Yeah, he was quiet off to the side playing with the iPad. The year I did the failure mode stuff.
Oh, very, very cool. Is he into electronics as
He's
well?
into nothing.
Sorry, but I would say that again.
He's into being into nothing.
Oh, fair play. How old is he?
He's 24 now.
Got it. Oh, he's a baby.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure things out at 24 myself.
I was doing the 128 when I was 24.
Wow, that really puts things into perspective. That's amazing.
23 when I did the 10. And because I'd never been to college, I was a couple years ahead of other people for experience. So even though I was only 23, I already had gotten product out at my previous company. So I knew how to do all the dirty little jobs at the age of 23. Normally you had to wait till like 25, 26 to have that experience.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, Doom Noob, I'm sorry, Dennis, I'm with you. I'm 43 and I still haven't figured things out. He said, the race. It's not a race. It's you're in it for the long term. We got some.
Oh, I just turned 65 and it is a race. They showed up. They handed me lots of money. There were balloons, confetti. They fixed. Yeah, the body works now. So it is a race. You need to.
So you just turned 65. Congratulations, Bill.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, just hit that.
Oh, amazing! Big congrats. That's awesome. That's an amazing milestone. Wow. We got some good questions here. Was Carl's Jackals asking, was 82-pin PLCC the biggest chip that they could do?
When I was there, it was a 48-pin dip. And I still tease Albert Charpentier about it because he only had 40-pin dips available to him, and I had 48 pins. So I was like, neener, neener, neener. So you're talking about something that happened right after my time. So now I'm familiar with it. The advantage of an 84-pin PLCC is you can put it into a socket or you can solder it directly to the board. And the socket can be through-hole processed. So probably the question is talking about what was a good chip that worked for both surface mount and through-hole during that transitional period. And the 68 and 84 pin were definitely those.
Got it. Thanks, Bill. Hazemaker64, who just made a brand new Commodore 64 game. Big congrats, Hayes. I love that people are still making games and these amazing products for the 8-bit computers and all the vintage computers. It's amazing. Congrats, Hayes. Bill, he's asking you, were you a fan of trying to keep the C64 going with things like the C64 GS in the early 90s? Or had you moved on by then? And do you remember
I didn't
having
know
thoughts?
about any of that. Yeah, I was gone. I didn't know about CMD or any of that stuff.
Got it. All right, thanks, Bill. Were there plans for Yanis to design any new sound hardware for Commodore?
Well, he did. He went on and helped found Ensoniq.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he's co-founder, him and Albert Charpentier, co-founder of Ensoniq, and Dave DiOrio went there, one of the big chip guys, and talked about he had choice words for Yanis when he pulled up in his Lamborghini. I want to say the word he called it because it was so uncharacteristic of Dave DiOrio, but yeah. So in other words, Yanis cashed out and is living a good life according to Charpentier.
Good for him. That's nice Lamborghini.
Yep.
Sweet. Thank you. Oh, that was Kurt. Kurt Booth asked that question. Thank you, Kurt. What are Mondala's asking you, Bill? What are you most proud of now that we're decades after the era?
That we got it done, and that the team was the team it was. There's nothing like taking a hill and you look to your right, you look to your left, and there's your team with you every step of the way. And again, I have no aspirations as to what the C-128 is as a computer, but I know it was made in 5 months in spite of the odds. And that it works. The hardware and the timing, there are no timing errors in the version I did.
I mean, 5 months just blows my mind because to me, time has been so accelerated now that I'm getting older. 5 months is a flash in the pan. I don't know how you guys designed an entire machine in 5 months. I mean, that's incredible.
New ROMs, pallets for shipping, and yes, the RF fields, getting it through FCC. Then the bodge wire. Then they go, oh look, it's failing. Oh, here, put this wire on it. It'll work. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was your first and favorite 8-bit. Awesome. A good one to follow up with is Band's question. Band 113 saying, is there anything you would have done differently looking back now?
I'd have eaten more sandwiches. It was pretty much, there's nothing I could do different. Probably would have stayed with the love of my life instead of, I lost her during that time.
It's, when you're married to your job like I am as well, it's tough to have a relationship, tough to have a family when you spend so much time, at your job. I can sympathize with you there. It's very, very hard. Jack Tramiel's talking about sandwiches in the chat. Whoever that is. Oh man. We got 3 more quick questions here, Bill. Then we'll wrap it up. I appreciate your time so much, Bill. Cal64, Bill, this is like after your time. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, but it's a good question. Cal's saying, do you know why the 68000 was chosen for the Amiga instead of the 6810 processor? Was it because of cost concerns or were there other factors as well?
It's what we could get in the earliest days. I remember seeing the first Hershey bar going, oh my God. I was afraid it was going to collapse under its own weight and become a miniature, singularity. I mean, it was huge. So, yeah, but that's what came out first, is my understanding.
Got it.
It's not well known, but I was in charge of the Amiga European line for a week. And that happened to be the week I gave my resignation.
Wait, what is the Amiga European line? The PAL versions of the machines?
Yes. I was supposed to like her, and that's a prime channel to just take over the whole chain then, and so it was a good chance, and I'm like, I can't tell them I've already agreed to take this other job.
Well,
so I was taking a job to be a director of engineering, so I thought I was moving up, and then you get to these other companies and find out they don't have chip fabs. Who knew?
That MOS chip fab must have been a huge advantage, like we said. And you probably you got spoiled, right?
Well, I used to say that Apple just hooked our chips up, but they actually used some of Rockwell's, so it's center text off.
2 more quick questions, Bill, and then we'll let you go. The C64 Television's asking, he said, Mr. Hurd, have any big companies like EA, Epix, etc. tried to directly influence Commodore 64 development?
Sure. We welcomed it. We wanted development. We shipped early versions of stuff. Like there was a C16 and a C64. I'm sorry, there was a 116 in a C64 housing for alpha units to get people writing code for TED. Now you mentioned EA. I was at the EA booth at 85 CES, and there's the president of EA. So I said, hey, I'm a long-haired radical SOB from Commodore. How's things? And he wanted to meet somebody. So I said, yeah, I'll go get you somebody. So I went and got Paul Goheen, our vice president in charge of software, took him back to introduce the head of EA. And they gave me lots of software that I took back, played in the booth, and now our booth became a commercial for EA software. So the moral of the story is give us stuff, and we'll play it in public for you.
Yeah, I remember some. That's really that's amazing. I remember some of the early EA games on my Commodore 64. It was Larry Bird versus Bird versus Johnson, I think it was. No, Dr. J versus Larry Bird. That was a really fun one. You would slam the basketball on the hoop, the backboard break, and then the guy would come out with his vacuum and clean it up. That was amazing.
And so one day I'm on the phone with EA support about 10 years ago, and I said, well, have you even heard of Commodore? And they're like, no. I'm like, you used to make computers for or games for Commodore, huh? And I find on their own website, like, you go to 19th, they're thinking I'm nuts. But I didn't mean.
That's unbelievable. It's funny how things change. I had a similar situation recently with NewTek was still going. I went to a presentation of the TriCaster, which is kind of like their evolved video toaster. And it's funny. Right. A lot of the folks didn't. They're like, oh, the toaster. Yeah, we used to make something like that. They didn't really know it. I was like, oh, come on.
Right. Yeah. Now I just don't. I used to say, did your grandparents have an old Commodore up in the attic? And now I just say, I have a nice day. So I heard Notch, the guy that did Pixel, the Minecraft.
Oh, right.
128. Yeah.
Oh, Notch started on a 128. That's amazing.
Yeah. And if he wants to contribute to my son's trust fund, I look forward to meeting him someday.
Maybe we can get him on the stream and I'll pitch that to him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like it should be worth like 1% of just that inspiration you talk about.
Yeah, some of the way the games catch on these days, like Minecraft and Fortnite. It's amazing how these games catch on. Speaking of games, Commodore Chronicles has got a good question. We all know that exclusive C128 games are super rare. Did any C128 games come across your desk?
Not really. No, I didn't expect any. We weren't engaged. We went way too fast. First on, we're not used to telling the world about something that's already done, and that's what we did at CES. We're used to that 5 months is normally used for alpha and beta software development. The last 5 months, but we used it to actually make the computer.
When you started to say things like you had things, but even though you didn't, and you had a lot of pressure to do it, and you said you always delivered. Was there ever a time when you guys couldn't deliver for a reason?
No.
Always delivered.
On those two programs, yeah, we got her done.
Amazing. One last question here, Bill, and then we'll wrap it up. I appreciate your time so much. It's always awesome talking to you, Bill. I love it. Doom Noob asked, who would Bill say does the equivalent of the Commodore 64 today, like a cheap but decent computer these days? Do you have one that you like?
Well, I will say that the 116 was the Raspberry Pi of its day. If you think about it, it's the smallest form factor little computer you get was the 116. I don't know who you would use for a 64 these days. The 64 to me was like a media gateway. And I'll introduce you to Albert Charpentier at VCF. come to VCF East, meet the designer of the Vic chip. That's for everybody. Albert Charpentier will be there Saturday, and I'll be introducing people to it.
Amazing, Bill. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for VCF East next weekend. Come meet Al Charpentier. And you never know who's going to be walking around. Greg Berlin, may pop out. Another Commodore engineer may sneak out from around the corner. Bill, you're going to be around as always. You're always such a big contributor to VCF East, and you're always so generous with your time and talking to everyone who comes up to you and telling amazing stories and teaching people about electronics. So I think you're obviously you're going to be walking around too. You're going to introduce Al Charpentier. Is it Charpentier? Is that what you're going to? Yeah.
Yep.
Charpentier, yeah, amazing. So it's gonna be great to see you again. I love VCF East. It's just like oh man, it's just a great vibe. And just going to that location, going to that Info Age Science Center, it just immediately like puts you in the right frame of mind. I love that TV and radio museum as well, and VCF's computer museum is also great. Their permanent installation is fantastic. So yeah, I mean, going to VCF East, it's not just a show about vintage computers. You get a lot more too. Radio, TV, the satellite dish, the Marconi satellite dish, where they used to bounce signals off the moon to communicate with the troops in World War II. It's really incredible.
Radar was made small enough to be on ships and things, partially due to the work done there, is my understanding.
Oh, that's cool. And the area is awesome too. Asbury Park is great. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. He got his start at the Stone Pony, and then we got the Silver Ball Arcade Museum, Pinball Arcade Museum.
We are going there Friday and Saturday nights. We are going to the Robinson Ale House. Everybody is welcome to grab a seat. And we'll be at the Silver Ball Arcade both Friday and Saturday nights.
It's a special place. The venue is beautiful. They have tons of rare pinball machines. Each one has got an explanation. The high score, an explanation of when the game came out, is right on the boardwalk, and you can see the beautiful Atlantic Ocean right there. They shot Chasing Amy there. When I shot Chasing Amy, we went back and recreated some scenes from Chasing Amy at Silver Ball. There's a lot of history at that place. I love it. And actually, Bell Laboratories isn't that far away either. I know there's been some folks from Bell Laboratories coming to VCF East and speaking in the past as well. So there's just a lot of history in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is New Jersey, and our ticks here are huge, and so you do not talk to them. They'll shiv you.
I don't like ticks. I've had Lyme disease 3 times, and Ehrlichia and babesiosis. Oh, it's brutal. We got them up here in New York too. They're brutal. Bill, is there anything else you'd like to share? I know you're doing some really cool stuff. You do stuff with Hackaday. You got c128.com. I got your YouTube channel in the chat as well. What do you so VCF East is next, and any other exciting projects coming up you'd like to share with the folks? YouTube, any other links you'd like me to share?
Just the whole VCF circuit this year. Just check it out. COVID's gone. We're doing the circuits and having a good time, and come see us. You were right. It's about the people. I didn't get that at first. I thought, well, why are you people driving so far? And they're family.
Really, really are. Yeah. I mean, I'm super lucky because I've been running this Amiga club since 1988, and Anthony helped me out when I went away. And so people, I mean, clearly in the early 2000s, it really wasn't about Amiga. It was about getting together and just hanging out with friends, and that was the most important part. And now at VCF, I start to see regular people there who I've made friends with. Folks who aren't into Amiga, they were into Mac or whatever. We made friends. It's just great to see them. They learned from me. I learned from them. And the good thing about the pandemic is that when things went virtual, it opened our club, and I think it opened up VCF and Westchester Amiga User Group to the world, because we started doing things online and virtually, which meant you didn't have to travel, so other people came in, and that was really, really great. But there's nothing like meeting in person, and some of the people that I've met online are now hey, that sounds cool, I'm not too far away, I'm gonna come. For example, Sigurborn, who's in the chat, another streamer I met here on Twitch, he's coming all the way from Iceland to go to VCF East because he's so excited. Ash is flying in from Georgia. People coming in from other countries to come to VCF East. So we met through virtually.
Yeah, Rob Clark's coming from Switzerland. So I and a bunch of my Commodore cronies will be hanging out in the parking lot, jumping anybody that looks like they're an Apple user. So just chill with the swag, guys.
You don't have to worry about it. I'll hide my iPhone from you, Bill.
Yeah. I have an iPhone detector on my iPhone. Yeah.
And I found detecting iPhone. That's hilarious. Bill, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate your generous time as always. I love all your stories. You're a great storyteller, a great friend, and great friend of the retro community. It's a pleasure to have you, Bill. Thank you so much. And I know everyone in the chat. I see everyone in the chat is super psyched, and they really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
Well, very cool. Thanks for having me on.
I'll see you next weekend, Bill.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All days. We'll be there all days.
Nice. You'll have to stop by. Well, I stop by all the exhibits are great. It's like a science fair. It brings me back. It's great.
Yep.
Take
Yeah,
care, Bill.
except for the ticks. Right. Don't talk to the ticks.
No,
Don't
no,
pet
stay away from the ticks. Maybe get a little DEET spray. Get those suckers out of there.
them. Right.
Cheers,
Go
Bill.
on,
Thank
Doc.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.